Hey, it's Brian Mudd. This is my cheat sheet for Tuesday, June 26th. Buyer beware online. We've talked before about how not all online reviews can be trusted. Increasingly, you've got to be more skeptical. Up to 80% of product reviews on sites like Amazon, for example, aren't completely legit. You see, in some cases, the most reviewed products are reviewed by so-called professional reviewers, people who are actually compensated based on the numbers of reviews they provide. So in many cases, they haven't even owned the product, have any experience with the product, but they're reviewing it so they can try to put another number next to their name to get more compensation from whatever company it might come from. Sound a little bit nefarious? Well, it is. And so you've got to be increasingly skeptical when picking what online product reviews to use, because most of us, before we buy online, do check out the product reviews. On top of that, books. That's where you've got to be the most skeptical. The most abuse in terms of non-legitimate reviews are being offered up on books because, in a large part, it's easy. You can scan through what the book's about, provide some kind of a generic review. Oftentimes it'll be positive because they're being compensated by somebody. These professional reviewers are. One of the things that Ashley and I do, because we are big users of online reviews for certain products, but especially when we're traveling, like TripAdvisor, look for added levels of specificity. Look for people who have things in common with you that in detail describe what it is they were looking for. When you see people that you identify with in the reviews with high levels of specificity, pay closer attention to their reviews. You might oftentimes find that those are the ones that are going to be most useful to you anyway, even beyond the illegitimate other ones of people who are just being compensated. Most of us work before we ever get to work now. You probably knew that, but now we have numbers to back it up. Increasingly, this is interesting, just over 70% of bosses say that they don't mind if their employees aren't exactly there at the time they're scheduled for work anymore. Of course, unless the whole business comes to a stop if that person's late. And the reason for that is, in this smart age of technology, we never really get away from work, do we? And most bosses now realize that work takes place outside the workplace. In fact, the average person, the average one of us in the workforce now spends 46 minutes every day working before we ever get to work. And then oftentimes we work a little bit after we get to work. But we've got nearly an hour jump start on the entire day. And the average work day, remember that old 9 to 5? Well, the average work day now starts at 7 o'clock in the morning because of that average 46 minutes of work before we get to work. So 7 o'clock starts the work day. We put in nearly a full hour before we get to work. All right, healthcare reform. Increasingly, it's looking like it's going to go down. After the ruling out of Arizona yesterday, you actually saw even more people break in the general direction of thinking that healthcare reform would go down. On Intrade, the prediction market, we're now seeing about an all-time high for healthcare reform, the individual mandate being struck down. Not sure what that's worth, but Intrade has been right in predicting the outcomes for the most part so far. 79% of all of those that are trading this on Intrade do think that healthcare reform, the individual mandate in the Affordable Care Act, goes down in the Supreme Court decision this week. And speaking of healthcare, it is the biggest cause of inflation over the past 30 years. We got our final 2011 inflation report yesterday. It shows that inflation ran at 3.1% in 2011, meaning that you had to make 3.1% more money just to stay even in 2011 versus 2010. So you can figure out if you made progress or fell behind last year. But not only last year, but if you go all the way back over the last 30 years, really 32, because you can go back to 1980, healthcare has been the single biggest driver of inflation. It is literally 200% above the inflation rate during that period of time. So you can see why it's so unaffordable now for the average American. That is the cheat sheet for today. I got plenty more on the physical cheat sheet for you to try out, including something I think is pretty cool. BMW working with Toyota technology on hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, among other things. Enjoy your day. We'll see you tomorrow.